Hello and welcome to today's Warhammer 40,000 10th edition battle report. It's Chaos Knights versus Space Wolves. Quick hint, didn't actually go very well for the Space Wolves, and I think I know why, but if you're good at this sort of thing and you can offer me some suggestions, then that would be helpful. Here is the Chaos Knights list. We've got a 2,000 point strike force, a Traitorous Lance. Character-wise, we've got a Chaos Cerastus Knight Lancer, 435 points, with a Cerastus Shock Lance, and we've got a Knight Despoiler, 465 points. It's a Warlord. Demon Breath Melter Gun, Demon Breath Thermal Cannon, Despoiler Gatling Cannon, Havoc Missile Pod, Heavy Dark Flamer, Titanic Feet. And the enhancement is Aura of Terror, and we've also got a Knight Rampager in there, 380 points, with a Diabolus Heavy Stubber and a Reaper Chainsword. For battle line, we've got some War Dog Brigands and some War Dog Carnivores, with Avenger Chain Cannons, Demon Breath Spears and Havoc Missile Multi-Launchers, and the Carnivores have got the Havoc Multi-Launchers and the Slaughter Claw. And there are two allied units of Nurglings, which didn't actually get used in the game, they just get in reserve. The way it was explained to me by my opponents is that the Rampager and the War Dogs are kind of melee specialists, and the Cerastus Knight Lancer, the Despoiler, and the Brigands are more shooty knights. Now here is the Space Wolves list. It's a little bit of a more complicated list, so I'd suggest you pause it and look at the list now if you want to sort of see it all on one page. Otherwise, I'll quickly go through the units one by one. For our Warlord, we've got Bjorn Fell-Handed with a Heavy Flamer, True Claw and Assault Cannon, and he's supported by an Iron Priest with a Hellfrost Pistol, a Servo and a Tempest Hammer, and there's also a Dreadnought with a Close Combat Weapon, Missile Launch and Twin Linked Las Cannons. For our battle line, we have a squad of 5 Grey Hunters led by a Wolfguard Terminator Pack Leader. Then we have another squad of 5 Grey Hunters, also led by Wolfguard Terminator Pack Leader. And we've got Plasma Guns, Plasma Pistols, Flamers, and we've got one team with an Assault Cannon and one team with a Heavy Flamer on the Terminator side. Next up, we've got 3 Blade Guard Veterans, who are probably just going to spend their time sitting on objectives. Then we have a team of 5 Long Fangs with the Long Fang Sergeant and a Wolfguard Terminator Pack Leader. Terminator's got an Assault Cannon, the Long Fang Pack Leader has a Melter Gun, and the other 5 all have Las Cannon. Then we have a squad of 10 Scout Snipers. Obviously these are a Legends data sheet now. Then we have a squad of 10 Wolfguard Terminators with some Power Fists, Storm Shields, 2 Assault Cannons, lots of Storm Bolters. Leader's got a Power Axe, and we've got 1 melee guy with a Thunder Hammer and Storm Shield. Next up, we've got a squad of 5 Wolf Scouts with shotguns and a Heavy Bolter. They've got Scouts and Infiltrate, so with the assaults on the shotguns, the hope is that maybe they could perform some secondaries. On the heavier side of things, we've got a Land Raider Crusader with Hurricane Bolters, Storm Bolters, Assault Cannons, Melter Gun, and a Hunter Killer Missile. Lastly, we have a Storm Raven Gunship with Hurricane Bolters on the side, Multi-Melter on the front, and Assault Cannons and the Typhoon Missile Launchers. Storm Strike Missile Launchers. Ones on the wings that seem a bit like reusable Hunter Killers, not the front-loaded ones. So, here's the battlefield. The objectives are where they are because the mission we had was the Hidden Supplies mission, and it's supposedly a tournament-y style layout there. Here I've shown all of the individual models for both sides, but when we start playing the game I will consolidate them to make it easier to show them moving around. At the end of deployment, this is how the battlefield looked. He'd kept the Nurglings in reserve, and I'd kept the Storm Raven and the Wolfguard Terminators ready to deep strike. He was moving his melee focused forces, the Rampager and the War Dog Carnivores, down what you see as the bottom side of the board here. He'd got the Despoiler in the middle and the Cerastus Knight and the War Dog Brigands at the top of the board. I really thought that this force I had, again, I didn't quite know what to do. Was it a case of, do I try and run around trying to grab secondaries, or just get onto objective and avoid being killed, or did I go for just trying to take them down? In the end, for the missions, he had tactical missions and I had fixed missions. I took assassinate and bring it down, with a view to just trying to focus all of my heavy stuff onto one night, get it down, and then move on to another and just try and somehow keep stuff alive. I didn't understand was quite how tough the knights are and how powerful they are, and quickly they can take down what you would normally consider quite a tanky, tough model. A knight can take down fairly quickly. For the movement phase, didn't seem to be much point in moving very much, so it was mainly all about trying to get things that had first turn, the dreadnoughts and the long fangs, in a position where they could shoot and hopefully try and do some damage to the melee focus knights that were coming down the bottom side of the board. For the shooting range, everything on the bottom side of the board fired at the Knight Rampager, and Bjorn wasn't quite in range for the assault cannon, obviously wasn't for the flamer. There were other things that weren't in range, and so he had 2 twin las cannons firing 5 las cannons. Melter gun wasn't in range. Some of the rolling, particularly the wound rolling, was really, really unlucky. I think it's like I rolled, I needed 4 ups to wound, and I got like 1 on the long fangs. Luckily, I think it got saved, but basically this entire volley of everything firing, yes, they weren't quite within optimum range, but they weren't really able to do anything like enough damage to have a point on it. And I think you're used to things like dreadnoughts being fairly tanky things with fairly strong weapons, but actually when you sort of compare them to knights, it just doesn't seem to, even the last cannon, which you normally think are going to be great for taking anything down, strength 12, AP -4, D6 +1 wounds. There's 5 of them in that squad. You'd think they should have done some damage, but they hardly did anything. So on the knight's first move, the brigands went down the side of the board to claim the top objective and move closer to the scouts and the land raider. The large knight, the Cerastus Lancer, he had a deployed teleporters mission from the tactical mission, so he moved into the centre and took that, and the spoiler moved towards where the Rampager and the War Dog Carnivores were, and they moved on to the other objective in the middle of the bottom side of the board, closer to my shooters. In the shooting phase, basically fired everything they could at the scouts, the wolf scouts that is, in the centre, and the dreadnoughts and the long fangs, but those were the melee focus knights, and they only had some sort of fairly weak stub weapon. It didn't actually do great deal of damage. Now, the Knight Rampager did have an ability that allowed it to move and to then charge as well. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but it meant he charged into combat with Bjorn the Fell-Handed and the other dreadnought. That didn't go very well for Bjorn the Fell-Handed with the other dreadnought. It pretty much wrecked them. So Space Wolves movement round 2. We'd lost the Wolf Scouts, and the Dreadnought and Bjorn were badly damaged at this stage. It was time to try and counterattack a bit, but the trouble is that not a lot had that seemed to be able to do very much damage to the knights. I moved the Land Raider out to the top of the board to try and maybe move towards those Knight Brigands, and otherwise it was just a case of holding on and being ready to fire into combat at -1 to hit with the Rampager, and using Oath of Moment to try and get as many hits as possible and hope enough would somehow get through. It was also time to bring in the Storm Raven from reserves to increase the firepower and to deep strike the Wolfguard Terminators onto that back objective. At this point, the Grey Hunters and the Sniper Scouts shot at the Cerastus Lancer, but really there was hardly any point. There was not much chance of them doing any damage, let alone any meaningful damage. We kept Oath of the Moment on the Rampager, and everyone that could fire anything fired everything it had into the Rampager, but again, due to some bad luck, mainly on the wound rolls, I think we maybe got him down to 8 wounds after 22 to start with, but it's still there's nothing like enough. this point, the Cerastus Knight moved, ready to shoot at and charge the Land Raider. The Knight Brigands, having seen the Storm Raven come on and thinking it was something they wanted to take down, they used their ability to move through the building, and the Rampagers basically charged again into the, moved into position so it could charge again into the remaining Long Fangs and characters on that side. We did have one of the smaller knights, the War Dog Carnivores, head back ready to charge back into the Wolfguard Terminators on that back objective. In the Chaos Knight's second shooting phase, the Brigands and the Rampager, although it didn't have much in the way of shooting weapons, had a crack at the Storm Raven, and the Cerastus Knight Lancer fired everything it had at the Land Raider Crusader. Now in the Chaos Knight's next move, the Cerastus Knight charged the Land Raider, and the Rampager charged into the remaining Long Fangs and the Iron Priest. And basically that round of melee that followed pretty much cleared out the army. At the end of 2 rounds, I was down 5 points against 28. I had another 5 points for a primary for the Blade God, but looking at how many models I'd got left and what he'd got left, it didn't actually seem worth continuing, so I decided to concede at this point. I'll be honest, this battle felt completely unwinnable for the Space Wolves. It felt like they were out-armoured and outgunned, and I can't actually see a way that I could have won this battle with the models that I had. What I would have had to take differently, maybe not having as many cheaper troops but having more long fangs with las cannons might have been helpful, but even that I don't know if it's winnable. Could I have played it better with the models I had? Possibly. Maybe instead of maybe taking the deploy teleporters would have been more useful. I would have been able to pick up more secondaries with that. In terms of actually shooting, I think I was hurt a little bit by bad luck. I think I was a little bit unlucky. I should have taken down the Knight Rampager. I should probably also have tried to take down one of the smaller knights first to get some more secondaries off that. But the trouble is, the way we were set up, it was difficult to get to them. I think the other thing I could have done is perhaps tried to not engage in melee, but actually try and use the cheaper troops, even if it meant not using infiltrate and scout and these sort of things, just to be in a position where they can get in the way and stop and hold up the big knights from charging into my shooty troops like Bjorn, the Dreadnought, the Last Cannon, the Storm Raven, and maybe the Land Raider. Things that have got devastating wounds, things that have got high strength, high AP, and just throw them in the way, line them up and force them to move, charge, and not let them get into that actual melee range. But whether it would have made a difference, I don't know. In ways, it'd be interesting to play the same team again, but with an idea to using those cheaper troops differently. So my question is, what do you think? Do you think this army could have won against these Chaos Knights? And if so, how could they have won? So thanks for watching anyway. Thanks for sticking with it. Please do let me know in the comments how you would have won this army, and if you think it can be won. If you think the Space Wolves, a different army list could have won this fight, then again, do tell me what changes you would make to the list. Again, it'd be nice to come up with a list which is fairly universal and not just against Chaos Knights, but I do think probably some changes in this situation would be good. But do let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Bye.